Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's latest statements have once again brought the spotlight back to the ongoing diplomatic tensions surrounding the war in Ukraine. On the 25th of November 2025, President Zelensky made a significant announcement regarding his ongoing efforts to forge deeper security agreements with the United States. This move, he explained, is a crucial part of Ukraine's strategy to counter the ongoing threats posed by Russia, a strategy that hinges heavily on the support and actions of the United States. In his daily address to the Ukrainian people, Zelensky shared details of a recent round of discussions held in Geneva. These talks, he revealed, had resulted in the drafting of a document that could serve as the foundation for future security agreements between Ukraine and the United States. This is not just a diplomatic formality. According to Zelensky, the implications of these agreements will have far-reaching consequences, especially in terms of security and military cooperation between the two nations. We worked with the Ukrainian negotiating team on the text of a document drafted with the United States in Geneva. The principles of this document can be developed into deeper agreements, and that is in our common interest to make security real, President Zelensky stated. This excerpt from his address highlights the pivotal role of the United States in shaping Ukraine's security landscape. Zelensky's emphasis on the document being the basis for deeper agreements indicates that this is not a temporary or surface-level agreement, but rather a strategic alignment that could endure for the long haul, potentially altering the balance of power in the region. But why is this so important? Zelensky's remarks came at a time when Ukraine is facing tremendous pressure on the battlefield. While Ukrainian forces continue to defend their territory, Russia remains steadfast in its pursuit of control. The global community, particularly in Europe, has remained largely supportive of Ukraine's sovereignty, but the pressure for a resolution remains high. In this context, President Zelensky has been consistent in his message. Ukraine cannot secure peace and sovereignty on its own. It requires steadfast, reliable support from global powers, most notably the United States. The United States plays a critical role in this process. Much depends on America because Russia pays the greatest attention to American strength, Zelensky continued. With this statement, the Ukrainian president underscored the pivotal position the United States holds in the geopolitical chessboard of the current conflict. For Russia, America's involvement is not merely a formality, it is a direct challenge. The Kremlin has long viewed American influence in Eastern Europe with suspicion, especially following the expansion of NATO and the support the US has provided to Ukraine in terms of military aid, intelligence sharing and diplomatic support. For President Zelensky, the stakes could not be higher. He understands that the presence and involvement of the United States is key to Ukraine's survival. A shift in US policy could drastically change the course of the conflict. If Washington were to scale back its support, it could embolden Moscow and possibly tilt the balance of power in Russia's favor. Conversely, a continued and robust American commitment would provide Ukraine with the strength it needs to hold the line and even advance its position against Russian forces. The connection between US support and Russian strategy is undeniable. Zelensky's emphasis on the Russian government's focus on American strength is a reminder of how deeply intertwined the two superpowers are in this conflict. Moscow has repeatedly framed its aggression in Ukraine as part of a larger struggle against Western influence in what it considers its sphere of influence. By directly confronting the United States, Russia seeks to challenge the very foundations of the post-Cold War order, one where the US has played a central role in maintaining global peace and stability. Yet, despite the clear focus on the role of the United States, Zelensky also acknowledged the importance of continued internal strength within Ukraine itself. It is important now to maintain our internal strength, just as we all want our diplomatic strength to yield results, he remarked. This statement is significant as it reflects Ukraine's recognition that it cannot solely rely on external forces to secure its future. There is a growing need for internal cohesion and unity within the country, as well as a sustained effort on the battlefield. The Ukrainian government has to ensure that its institutions, its military, and its society remain resilient in the face of adversity. Zelensky's call for maintaining internal strength is likely an appeal not just to the Ukrainian military and political leadership, but also to the Ukrainian people. The war has brought untold hardship to Ukraine, with thousands of lives lost, homes destroyed, and entire regions displaced. The country is in the midst of a humanitarian crisis, and the internal unity of the Ukrainian people will play a decisive role in whether the country can endure the hardships of war. While President Zelensky has repeatedly expressed gratitude for the international support Ukraine has received, he has also called on his own people to stay committed to the cause. The strength of the nation's resolve is vital to its success on the world stage. If Ukraine is to secure lasting peace, it must demonstrate to the world that it is capable of sustaining its fight both militarily and diplomatically. In light of Zelensky's recent remarks, it is clear that Ukraine's relationship with the United States will continue to play a central role in its efforts to push back against Russia. The draft document discussed in Geneva is just one step in a longer journey of diplomacy and cooperation. However, the document's potential to develop into deeper agreements speaks to the broader strategic vision both Ukraine and the United States share for the region's security. One of the key elements that will determine the success of these agreements is the continued commitment from Washington. As President Zelensky stated, much depends on America. While there is no question that Ukraine is fighting valiantly, the international community, including the US, must remain steadfast in its support. Without continued political, military and economic backing from Washington, Ukraine's position could weaken and Russia could regain the momentum it has been fighting for since the beginning of this conflict. The current status of global diplomacy indicates that the situation in Ukraine is far from being resolved. Despite significant pressure from both sides and despite the considerable costs of the conflict, neither Russia nor Ukraine has shown any signs of backing down. The United States remains a crucial player in this geopolitical struggle, and it is clear that its actions, whether through direct military support, economic sanctions, or diplomatic interventions, will continue to shape the course of the war. President Zelensky's statement underscores the delicate balance of power in this conflict. His acknowledgement of the role the United States plays is not just a diplomatic overture, it is a recognition of the hard reality of international politics. Ukraine cannot win this war alone, and it relies on the strength of its allies, particularly the US, to continue its fight for sovereignty and territorial integrity. In conclusion, the road ahead for Ukraine remains uncertain. While President Zelensky has been a strong advocate for his country's sovereignty, his recent remarks indicate that the road to a potential resolution is heavily dependent on the United States. Whether through the finalization of agreements drafted in Geneva or continued support on the global stage, America's influence will remain a key factor in determining the future of Ukraine. However, this is not just a diplomatic struggle, it is a fight for survival. Zelensky's call for internal strength reminds us that Ukraine's future will also depend on the resilience of its people, its military, and its government. The next steps in this conflict will undoubtedly shape the course of history for Ukraine, Europe, and the wider world.